The ancient stone hummed with a light that had not touched it for 10,000 years. Deep beneath the frozen surface of the mining colony on Valkesh 7, the excavation team stood in silent awe. Four arms pressed together in the traditional gesture of wonder. Elder researcher Tevsha approached the massive structure. "It cannot be," she whispered, her violet eyes wide. "The architects, they were real." The beacon towered 3 times her height, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and dance in the dim light of their work lamps. For 3,000 years, the Valkesh had heard stories of the architects, the mysterious beings who had supposedly seeded life across the galaxy. Most considered them myths, children's tales, but here was proof, buried in the ice of a world they had colonized only 50 years ago. Tevsha's assistant, a young scholar named Ralven, carefully ran his scanner over the surface. "Elder, the energy readings are unlike anything in our database. This technology is far beyond our current understanding." "Can you activate it?" Tevsha asked. Ralven's hands trembled slightly as he worked. The Valkesh were a peaceful people, devoted to knowledge and art. They had not known war in living memory. Their greatest conflicts were debates over philosophy or the proper interpretation of ancient poetry. The idea that something so powerful lay hidden on one of their worlds both thrilled and frightened them. "I believe so," Ralven said. "The interface seems designed to be intuitive, almost as if they wanted it to be found, to be used." He pressed his palm against a glowing panel. The beacon's hum grew louder, deeper. Light poured from the symbols, projecting a holographic display into the air above them. The language was unknown, but slowly the symbols began to shift. They changed into Valkesh script. Tevsha read aloud, her voice shaking. "Warning to the children of the stars. The swarm sleeps, but it will wake. When darkness comes, seek the guardians. Activate this beacon. They will answer." "What swarm?" Ralven asked. "What guardians?" The answer came 3 weeks later. The colony ships emerged from the darkness between stars like a nightmare made real. They were not ships as the Valkesh understood them. These were living things, vast and terrible, covered in chitinous armor and pulsing with bioluminescent organs. They moved like a school of fish, 1,000 strong, their formation perfect and terrifying. The Valkesh defense fleet met them at the edge of the system. 20 ships, equipped with particle beams and energy shields. They had been designed to deflect asteroids and defend against pirates, not fight a war. The Valkesh had not fought a real war in 3 millennia. The swarm showed them what war truly meant. The bioships released clouds of smaller creatures, each one a living missile. They crashed into the Valkesh shields, exploding in bursts of acid and biological matter. The Valkesh weapons fired, cutting through dozens of the creatures, but for every one destroyed, 10 more took its place. Commander Zelthar watched in horror from the bridge of the flagship Harmony's voice. "They do not stop," he said, his 4 hands gripping the command console. "They do not retreat. They do not fear." "Because they are not individuals," his tactical officer replied, her voice hollow. "They are one mind, one hunger." The swarm consumed the defense fleet in 40 minutes. The surviving Valkesh ships jumped to faster-than-light speed, fleeing back toward their homeworld. But the swarm followed, relentless as death itself. The swarm did not negotiate. It did not communicate. It simply arrived, overwhelmed any resistance, and stripped worlds bare. The Valkesh watched in horror as 3 of their 6 star systems went dark, their colonies reduced to lifeless rocks. The High Council gathered on Valkesh Prime, their homeworld. The chamber that had once echoed with philosophical debates, now filled with desperate voices. "We must surrender," one counselor pleaded. "Perhaps we can bargain with them." "Bargain with what?" Elder Tevsha demanded. She had returned from the mining colony, bringing the architect beacon with her. "They do not speak," They do not want territory or resources. They want to consume, to add us to themselves. Then what do you propose? The High Counselor asked. Tevsha placed her hands on the table. We activate the beacon. We call for these guardians the architect spoke of. We do not even know if they exist, another counselor argued. It could be a trap, or a false hope from a dead civilization. What choice do we have? Tevsha said quietly. In 3 days, the swarm will reach our homeworld. Our remaining fleets cannot stop them. We have exhausted every option. Either we pray to the ancients for salvation, or we wait here to die. The vote was unanimous. They placed the beacon in the largest transmitter array on the planet. Tevsha herself activated it, speaking the ancient words that had been inscribed on its base. The beacon's light grew until it filled the sky, a pillar of hope reaching toward the stars. The signal pulsed outward, traveling faster than light, crossing the galaxy in moments. It carried the desperation of an entire species, a prayer to gods they had never met. For 2 days, there was only silence. The swarm entered orbit on the 3rd day. Their bioships blotted out the sun, casting the world below in shadow. The Valkesh huddled in underground shelters, holding their children close, singing the old songs one last time. Then Tevsha's communicator crackled to life. The voice that came through spoke in broken Valkesh, as if the speaker had learned it moments ago from the beacon's signal. Signal received. We are Terra. We are coming. Hold your position. Do not surrender. We will be there soon. Who are you? Tevsha asked, her voice breaking. Are you the Guardians? There was a pause. Then the voice responded, and there was something in its tone that sent a chill down Tevsha's spine. It was not the voice of gods. It was the voice of something that had known war, that had survived it, that had been forged in fire and blood. Guardians, demons, we have been called both. Right now, we are your only hope. Keep your people safe. We will handle the rest. Tevsha looked up at the ceiling, imagining the swarm ships above, preparing to rain death upon her world. And somewhere in the darkness of space, something else was coming, something that had heard their prayer and answered. She whispered a prayer to the gods, but deep in her heart, she knew the gods had not answered. Something else had, something perhaps more terrifying than the swarm itself. Time would tell if that was a blessing or a curse. The bombardment began at dawn. The swarm's bioships released spores into the atmosphere, great seed pods that screamed as they fell. They struck the cities of Valkesh Prime like meteors, each impact sending shockwaves that shattered windows and cracked walls. From these pods emerged smaller creatures, insect-like hunters that scuttled through the streets, seeking any life that remained above ground. In the deep shelters beneath the capital city, Tevsha listened to the reports. 70 million Valkesh huddled in bunkers across the planet. Their shields would hold for perhaps another day, maybe 2 if they were lucky. Then the swarm would dig them out like insects from a nest. Elder, we are detecting spatial distortions at the edge of the system, a young technician reported, her voice trembling. More swarm ships? Tevsha asked, though she already knew they had lost. No, Elder, the signature is different. These distortions are violent. Like space itself is being torn open. On every screen in the command center, the same image appeared. At the system's edge, reality cracked. Not the gentle shimmer of standard faster-than-light travel, but something brutal and forceful. Space ripped apart in a dozen places, and through those wounds came ships. They were not beautiful like Valkesh vessels, all smooth curves and artistic design. These were brutal things, angular and armored, covered in weapons that bristled from every surface. They bore scars, dents, and burn marks that spoke of battles fought and survived. On their hulls were symbols in a language Tevsha did not recognize, and names. Indomitable, Fury's Edge, Remember Thermopylae. Terran Defense Force to Valkesh Command, a voice crackled over the emergency channel. We are engaging hostile bioforms. All civilian populations maintain shelter protocols. This is Admiral Chen of the TDF Relentless. We have your position. Hold on. They came, Tevsha whispered. The Terrans. They actually came. Elder, their weapon signatures. The tactical officer's voice trailed off in disbelief. They are carrying nuclear warheads, hundreds of them. And these readings, antimatter reactions, kinetic impactors, these are not defensive weapons. Tevsha felt her blood run cold. The Valkesh had abandoned such terrible weapons millennia ago, when they had embraced peace and enlightenment. To see them again, to know that somewhere in the galaxy beings still use such horrors. Are we saved or doomed? She asked no one in particular. The Terran fleet did not wait, did not form careful battle lines, or attempt communication with the swarm. They attacked with a ferocity that shocked the Valkesh observers. The lead ships accelerated directly toward the swarm formation, their weapons blazing. Nuclear warheads detonated in the void, turning space itself into a hellscape of radiation and fire. Kinetic projectiles, simple rods of metal accelerated to impossible speeds, punched through bioships like spears through flesh. And the Terran vessels themselves fought at ranges the Valkesh considered suicidal, so close that debris from destroyed swarm ships peppered their armor. They fight like madmen, a Valkesh observer said. Do they not value their own lives? The answer came when a Terran destroyer, the Defiance Stand, found itself surrounded by swarm cruisers. The bioships latched onto its hull, beginning the assimilation process that had doomed so many species. They would absorb the ship, learn its technology, add it to the collective. But the Terrans had other plans. Defiance Stand to fleet, the captain's voice broadcast on all channels. Initiating Protocol Omega. It has been an honor. For Terra, for humanity, for those who cannot fight for themselves. The destroyer's reactor went critical. The explosion vaporized everything within 1,000 kilometers, taking 12 swarm ships with it. Tevsha stared at the screen in horror. They destroyed themselves. They chose death rather than capture. Receiving another transmission from the Terran flagship, the communications officer said quietly. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. She was human, though Tevsha had never seen one before. The features were alien and disturbing. 2 eyes that faced forward, the mark of a predator. Flat teeth visible when she spoke, except for the pointed canines. Hair the color of iron, cut short in a military style. But it was the eyes that unsettled Tevsha most. They were hard, calculating, the eyes of someone who had seen death and was not afraid of it. Valkesh Command, this is Admiral Chen. We have broken their forward formations. The swarm is attempting to regroup. We are going to pursue them off-world, but we need to clear the surface first. Requesting permission to deploy ground forces. You have our permission, Admiral, Tevsha said. What do you need from us? Stay underground. Stay safe. We will handle the rest. And Valkesh Command, we heard your call. We came as fast as we could. I am sorry we could not arrive sooner. The transmission ended. Tevsha felt something wet on her face, and realized she was crying. These strange, violent beings from Terra had crossed the galaxy because they heard a prayer for help. She did not understand them, but she was grateful beyond words. The Terran ground forces arrived in dropships that fell from orbit like meteors. They did not land gently. They crashed into the streets, using retro thrusters at the last moment to slow their descent. Ramps dropped, and out poured soldiers in powered armor that made them twice the height of a Valkesh. What followed was a slaughter, but not of the Valkesh. The Terran Marines moved through the city with brutal efficiency. Their weapons fired explosive rounds that turned swarm creatures into pulp. They advanced in coordinated teams, covering each other, never leaving a fallen comrade behind. When one soldier went down, two more would drag them to safety, while the rest maintained fire. The swarm creatures were fearless, driven by a hive mind that did not understand retreat. But the humans were something else entirely. They were afraid. Tevsha could see that in their vital signs on her medical scanners. But they fought anyway. They fought harder because they were afraid, channeling their fear into fury. "What manner of beings are these?" Tevsha asked. "They know fear, but do not flee. They see death and charge toward it." A Terran medic's channel opened accidentally, and Tevsha heard a voice speaking to wounded civilians. "It is okay. We've got you. Nobody dies today. Not on my watch. Come on, stay with me, stay with me." The voice was young, female, desperate, but it was also fierce with determination. This soldier would not let the Valkesh civilians die, would not accept their death, fought against it with the same fury her comrades used against the swarm. By sunset, the swarm ground forces had been eliminated. The bioships in orbit were retreating, harried by Terran fighters. The Valkesh emerged from their shelters to find their cities damaged but standing, their people alive, and these strange armored figures standing guard. Tevsha walked through the streets, seeing the Terrans for the first time. They had removed their helmets, and she saw faces marked by stress and exhaustion. Young faces, many of them. Children fighting wars. One soldier, barely an adult, sat against a wall, shaking. His comrade sat beside him, saying nothing, just being present. "Who are you?" Tevsha asked quietly. A Terran officer approached. She was smaller without the armor, almost fragile-looking, but her eyes held that same hardness Tevsha had seen in Admiral Chen. "We are human," the officer said. "We are Terrans. We heard your call. We answered." "Why?" Tevsha asked. "You did not know us. You owed us nothing." The officer was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Because someone needed help. Because we could. Because if we do not stand against the darkness, who will?" Tevsha looked at this human, this Terran, this being from a world she had never heard of until days ago. And she understood that they had not summoned gods. They had summoned something far more dangerous and far more valuable. They had summoned people who knew exactly what it meant to fight, to lose, to die, and chose to do it anyway, for strangers. The meeting chamber had been hastily prepared. Valkesh workers had cleaned away the debris from the bombardment and arranged seating for the Terran delegation. Tevsha stood with the High Council, all of them wearing their finest robes, trying to maintain dignity despite the circumstances. When the Terrans arrived, they did not come alone. Ambassador Wei entered first, a small human with gray hair and kind eyes. But behind her came 6 Marines in full combat armor, weapons at the ready, scanning the room for threats. "Is this necessary?" the High Counselor asked, gesturing to the guards. "We mean you no harm. You saved us." Ambassador Wei smiled gently. "I apologize if it seems excessive, but we have protocols. We have learned, through hard experience, to be careful. The guards will remain outside if you prefer." The Marines took positions at the doors. Tevsha noticed they never fully relaxed, even in this peaceful chamber. Always watching. Always ready. "Please sit," the High Counselor said. "We have much to discuss. First, we must express our deepest gratitude. You came when we called. You fought for us. Many of your people died protecting ours." Wei inclined her head. 23,000 casualties, 4,000 dead. It is a price we accept. Your people needed help. The number struck Tevsha like a physical blow. 4,000 dead. For strangers, for people they had never met. The Valkesh had not lost 4,000 people to violence in 1,000 years. These humans had lost that many in 3 days, fighting for someone else's world. We wish to understand you better, Tevsha said carefully. Your species, your culture. You are unlike any beings we have encountered. What would you like to know? Wei asked. Everything, Tevsha said. Start with your world. Where do you come from? Wei activated a holographic display. An image of a blue and green world appeared, beautiful and inviting. This is Earth, Terra, our homeworld. It is a death world by galactic standards. Death world? The High Counselor asked. It looks peaceful. It is beautiful, Wei agreed. It is also deadly. 90% of the species that have ever lived on Earth are now extinct. The planet has survived 5 mass extinction events. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes. Life on Earth is a constant battle for survival. She changed the image, showing creatures that made the Valkesh gasp in horror. Predators with massive teeth, venomous creatures, parasites. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We are not the strongest or fastest species on our world, but we are the most stubborn. We can run for days without stopping. We can survive injuries that would kill most beings. We learn to use tools, to cooperate, to plan. We became the apex predator not through strength, but through intelligence and sheer refusal to give up. Your entertainment, Tevsha said, changing the subject. Our researchers have been analyzing your cultural database. Your stories are filled with violence, war, conflict. Your games simulate combat. Your sports are ritualized fighting. Even your children play games about battles and conquest. Wei did not seem offended. Yes, violence is part of our history. We do not hide from it. We tell stories about it to remember, to learn, to ensure we never forget what we are capable of. Tell us about your history, Tevsha said quietly. Please, we need to understand. What followed was a history lesson that left the Valkesh shaken. Wei spoke of tens of thousands of years of warfare, tribes fighting over resources, nations conquering each other, 2 world wars that killed hundreds of millions, nuclear weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds, biological weapons, chemical weapons, genocides, and atrocities that made Tevsha ill to hear about. How did you survive? She asked. How did you not destroy yourselves? We almost did, Wei admitted. Many times. But each time we chose to rebuild, to try again, to be better. We unified not because we overcame our violent nature, but because we learned to direct it outward, against threats to all of us, instead of each other. The alarms interrupted them. Swarm ships had been detected entering the outer system, regrouping for another attack. They are coming back, Tevsha said, more than before. Wei stood. Then we will meet them again. Ambassador duty ends when bullets start flying. I will be returning to the flagship. Wait, Tevsha said. You fight too? You are a diplomat? Wei smiled, and for the first time, Tevsha saw the hardness beneath the kindness. Every human is a soldier when needed. We can discuss philosophy and art over tea, then pick up a rifle and fight when called upon. We are both, always both. The Terran Marines deployed across the planet as the swarm approached. This time, the Valkesh watched more carefully, trying to understand these strange saviors. Tevsha observed a Marine unit defending a civilian shelter. They were young, most of them. Some looked barely old enough to be considered adults. They set up weapons emplacements and barriers, working with practiced efficiency. One of them, a medic named Sarah Chen, sang while she worked. A strange song about staying strong, about not breaking. The other Marines joined in, their voices blending. Why do they sing? A Valkesh observer asked. To maintain morale, Sarah explained when asked. To remember why we fight. To stay human, even when doing inhuman things. The swarm ground forces hit the city like a wave. But this time, the Terrans were ready. They had studied the enemy, learned their patterns, adapted their tactics, The battle was still brutal, but the humans fought with a terrible grace that spoke of species-long experience with warfare. Sarah worked frantically, treating wounded Marines and Valkesh civilians alike. She moved through fire without hesitation, dragging injured people to safety. When a swarm creature attacked her directly, she killed it with her sidearm without missing a beat in her treatment of a wounded Valkesh child. "You must go to safety," Tevsha told her. "You are wounded yourself." Sarah looked down at the blood seeping through her armor. "It's fine. Flesh wound. These people need help more than I need a bandage." "You are not afraid?" Tevsha asked. Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I am terrified. Every second. But fear is just a chemical reaction. Adrenaline, cortisol. You can fight through it. Because people are depending on you." A Marine fell nearby, taken down by swarm weapons. Two of his squad mates immediately pulled him back, while others provided covering fire. They worked on him frantically, refusing to let him die. "Get up, Jackson," one of them shouted. "You promised me a drink when this is over. You don't get to die before buying that drink." Jackson coughed, laughed weakly. "Can't break a promise, that would be rude." They kept fighting. A human instinct Tevsha was beginning to understand. Not just to survive, but to protect, to stand together, to refuse to accept death, even when it seemed inevitable. The battle lasted 8 hours. By the end, the swarm forces were destroyed again, but the cost had been high. More Terran dead, more wounded. Yet when Tevsha walked among them after, she saw no despair. But they also helped each other, tended each other's wounds, told jokes to ease the tension. Sarah sat against a wall, finally allowing someone to treat her wounds. She had been hit 3 times, Tevsha realized. 3 times, and she had kept working until every civilian was safe. "Why do you do this?" Tevsha asked her. "Why risk so much for people you do not know?" Sarah looked at her, with eyes that seemed far too old for her young face. "Because someone has to. Because we know what it is like to be helpless, to face extinction, to pray for help that might never come. We know that darkness. We have lived in it. And we decided as a species that we would be the ones who answer when others call for help. Not because we are heroes, but because we remember what it is like to be afraid. And we refuse to let others face that alone." Tevsha understood then. They were survivors of a death world who had turned their suffering into strength, their fear into courage, their violence into protection. They were dangerous, yes, but that danger was directed at those who threatened the innocent. They had not summoned gods. They had summoned something better. They had summoned humans. The intelligence report came from deep space monitoring stations. Tevsha read it 3 times, hoping she had misunderstood. She had not. "It is the source," she told Admiral Chen via holographic communication. "The swarm hive mind itself. It is coming." On the display, Chen's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, understanding, perhaps fear, though she hid it well. "How big?" "The size of our moon," Tevsha said quietly, "and it is bringing everything. Our sensors detect millions of bioships in formation around it. Every swarm force in this sector is converging." "How long do we have?" Chen asked. 5 days, until it enters our system. Admiral, our people should evacuate. We can flee to neighboring systems, scatter, survive somewhere else. You have done enough. You have saved us. We cannot ask you to face this." Behind her, Tevsha could see other Terran officers listening, their faces grim. Finally, the Admiral spoke. "We did not come here to delay your extinction, Elder Tevsha. We came here to prevent it. We will not abandon you. But I need to make something clear. What we are about to do, what we are preparing to unleash, it will show you the true face of humanity. It will not be pretty. You may decide when this is over that we are indeed the demons you feared." "What are you planning?" Tevsha asked. Total war, Shen said simply. Humanity has fought many enemies. We have lost more battles than we have won. But we learned something important. When facing extinction, you do not hold anything back. You do not save weapons for later. You use everything. You risk everything. Because there is no later if you lose. The Terran fleet began regrouping, but not to retreat. More ships arrived through violent spatial tears, answering Chen's call for reinforcements. These were not just military vessels. Supply ships, hospital ships, colony transports that had been converted into carriers for fighter craft. Humanity was bringing everything it had. Tevshaw watched the preparations with growing unease. The Terrans were building something at the edge of the system, massive structures assembled from prefabricated components. When she asked what they were, a human engineer explained with disturbing cheerfulness. Navigation beacons, he said. Very powerful ones. We are going to lead the swarm on a chase through the system, and we need to make sure they follow exactly where we want them to go. A trap, Tevshaw realized. The biggest trap humanity has ever built, the engineer confirmed. We have seeded the entire projected path with mines, self-replicating ones, AI-guided drones, nuclear-shaped charges, antimatter warheads. Things we have never deployed before, because frankly, they scare us too. But we are out of options for restraint. The Hive Leviathan arrived on schedule, a moon-sized horror that defied description. It was organic and mechanical at once, a fusion of 1 billion consumed species. Its surface crawled with bioships, like parasites on flesh. Around it, the swarm fleet numbered in the millions. Admiral Chen broadcast on all frequencies. All civilian vessels evacuate to the far side of the system. All Valkesh Defense Forces withdraw to safe distance. Terran Defense Force, this is Operation Prometheus. Authorization code, Remember Earth. All ships, engage. The Terran fleet did not wait for the swarm to attack. They charged directly at the Hive Leviathan, weapons blazing. But this time, they did not stand and fight. They fired, then retreated, drawing the swarm deeper into the system. The Leviathan followed, confident in its overwhelming numbers. It had consumed 1,000 species over 10,000 years. These humans were just another meal, another set of technologies to absorb and repurpose. It did not understand humanity's greatest strength, their ability to learn from the past, to plan for the future, and to sacrifice the present. The Terrans led the swarm through the navigation corridor they had prepared. As the bioships passed each beacon, mines activated. Thousands of them. Explosions bloomed across the void like deadly flowers. The swarm lost hundreds of ships, but it had millions. It pressed forward. Then the self-replicating mines activated. Each one destroyed became components for 2 more. The swarm found itself in a minefield that grew faster than they could clear it. Ships died by the thousands. Still the Leviathan came, its vast bulk plowing through the defenses. Now, Admiral Chen said quietly, the Terran home fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel directly behind the Leviathan. These were not the expeditionary ships that had first responded to Valkesh's call. These were Earth's final defenders, the ships held back to protect humanity's homeworld. Dreadnoughts carrying experimental weapons, carriers filled with AI-guided drones, and at the center, the experimental world ship Yamato, humanity's attempt to build a mobile fortress capable of evacuating Earth if necessary. The Yamato fired its main weapon, a Kasaba howitzer nuclear-shaped charge that focused the energy of a nuclear explosion into a directed beam. The blast carved through 100 bioships and struck the Leviathan's surface, burning a crater miles deep. The hive mind, for the first time, felt something like pain. It turned its attention to this new threat, its bioships swarming toward the Terran home fleet. The battle that followed was beyond anything the Valkesh had seen. The Terrans fought with desperate fury, knowing this was humanity's entire military force. If they lost here, Earth would be defenseless. They could not afford to lose. Ships died on both sides. For every bioship destroyed, the swarm had 10 more. For every Terran vessel lost, there were no replacements. The math was brutal and simple. The swarm would win through attrition, unless the Terrans changed the equation. Captain Rodriguez of the frigate Last Hope watched his ship die around him. Systems failing, hull breached, crew dead or dying. The swarm was closing in to assimilate what remained. "All hands, abandon ship," he ordered. "Get to the escape pods." His executive officer looked at him. "Captain, the Leviathan's core is exposed. That last Yamato strike opened it up. If someone could get a warhead inside—" Rodriguez understood immediately. He looked at his remaining crew. Young faces, people with families, with futures. Everyone off. "That is an order." "Sir, you cannot pilot the ship alone," his XO protested. "I am not asking for volunteers," Rodriguez said firmly. "I am ordering you to survive. Go. Tell them what we did here. Remember us." They left, tears streaming down their faces. Rodriguez sat alone on the dying bridge and plotted his course. The Last Hope had one antimatter warhead left. It would have to be enough. He accelerated toward the Leviathan, dodging through the chaos of battle. Sworn ships fired at him, but he was just one small frigate among thousands of targets. He made it through their defenses, burning his engines past safety limits. The Leviathan's core loomed before him, a massive organic structure that pulsed with the stolen life force of 1 billion beings. Rodriguez armed the warhead and locked his course. "Terran Defense Force," he broadcast. "This is Captain Miguel Rodriguez of the Last Hope. Tell my wife I love her. Tell my children their father fought for something that mattered. Tell Earth that we did our duty. Terra remembers. We all remember." He crashed into the Leviathan's core at full speed. The antimatter warhead detonated, and for a brief moment, a new sun was born in the heart of the swarm's hive mind. The Leviathan screamed, not with sound, but with psychic agony that echoed across the system. Its hold over the bioships wavered. Individual ships, freed from the collective mind for the first time in their existence, faltered in confusion. "All ships," Admiral Chen ordered, her voice heavy with grief and determination. "Press the attack. Finish this. For Rodriguez. For everyone we have lost. End it now." The Terran fleet poured everything they had into the dying Leviathan. Nuclear fire, kinetic strikes, plasma beams. They carved it apart, piece by piece, ship by ship, until the vast structure began to break apart. The hive mind's death scream was the sound of 1 billion consumed species finally finding release. The Leviathan shattered, its fragments drifting in the void. The bioships, leaderless, mindless, began to flee or self-destruct in confusion. The battle was over. The swarm was broken. But 70% of the Terran fleet was gone. Tens of thousands dead. The survivors drifted in the debris field, too exhausted to celebrate. Tevsha watched from Valkesh Prime and wept, not just for the loss, but for the sacrifice. These humans, these strange, violent beings from a death world, had risked everything, had given everything, for strangers, for people they barely knew. They had prayed to the gods for salvation. The universe had sent them something better. It had sent them humans who understood darkness intimately and chose to fight it anyway. A memorial garden grew in the heart of Valkesh Prime's capital city, where the worst of the bombardment had fallen. Valkesh artisans had worked alongside human engineers to create something beautiful from the ruins. Trees from Earth grew beside crystal sculptures from Valkesh tradition. Water features played music in both languages, a harmony of two worlds. At the center stood a monument of black stone, 3 stories tall. On it were inscribed 37,000 names. Every human who had died defending the Valkesh Republic. Every soldier, pilot, medic, and crew member who had answered the call and never went home. Tevsha stood before it, one hand resting on the stone. Around her, thousands had gathered. Valkesh civilians and Terran survivors stood together in silence. The ceremony would begin soon, a joint memorial service for the fallen. Admiral Chen approached, walking with a slight limp from injuries sustained in the final battle. She had refused medical leave, insisting on staying until every survivor was accounted for, every body recovered, every family notified. "It is beautiful," Chen said quietly, looking at the monument. "They would have appreciated it." "It is not enough," Tevsha said. "Words on stone cannot repay what was given. Your people crossed the galaxy for strangers. 37,000 will never see their homeworld again because of us." Chen was quiet for a moment. "They did not die for you, Elder Tevsha. Not exactly. They died for what they believed in. The idea that no one should face extinction alone. That when darkness comes, someone should answer. They died knowing their sacrifice meant millions of Valkesh would live. That is enough. That is everything." The High Counselor spoke first, his forearms trembling as he addressed the crowd in both Valkesh and heavily accented Terran Standard. "We called out into the void in our darkest hour. We prayed for salvation, for gods to save us from extinction. But the universe sent us something we did not expect. It sent us people. Flawed, mortal, beautiful people who knew fear and chose courage. Who faced death and chose to protect life. Who saw strangers in need and chose to help." He paused, gathering himself. "The Terrans showed us that divinity is not about perfection or power. It is about choice. The choice to stand when you could run, to fight when you could hide, to sacrifice when you could save yourself. By that measure, the Terrans are the most divine beings we have ever encountered." Sarah Chen stood among the survivors, her arm in a sling, her face still bearing the scars of battle. She listened as Valkesh children sang a song of remembrance in halting Terran Standard, their voices pure and clear. Many of them were alive only because she had pulled them from burning buildings, had shielded them with her own body, had refused to let them die. After the ceremony, a young Valkesh approached her. No more than 10 years old by human standards, she held a small crystal sculpture, shaped like a flower. "For you," the child said shyly. "You saved my family. My mother says you are a hero." Sarah knelt down, accepting the gift. "I am not a hero. I am just someone who did her job." "You are a hero," the child insisted. "Heroes are people who help others even when they are scared. My mother says you were very scared, but you saved us anyway." Sarah smiled. Their tears gathered in her eyes. "Your mother is very wise. Yes, I was scared, but I could not let that stop me. Too many people needed help." Later, as the crowds dispersed, Ambassador Wei met with the Galactic Council via quantum communication. The Council had been monitoring the situation, and now they wanted answers. The holographic forms of a dozen alien species filled the chamber, their expressions ranging from awe to concern. "Ambassador Wei," the council speaker began. She was a Zalthor, a species of crystalline beings who had led the council for 3 centuries. "We have observed the conflict. We must know. What are humans? Where did you come from? Your technology is advanced, but not revolutionary. Your ships are powerful, but not invincible. Yet you defeated a threat that has consumed 1,000 civilizations." Wei stood before them, small and tired, but unbowed. "We came from Earth, a death world where survival was never guaranteed. We are persistence hunters who learn to think, to plan, to cooperate. We are the species that almost destroyed itself 100 times, but chose to rebuild every time. We are survivors." "You are warriors," another counselor said, and there was fear in their voice. You carry weapons that violate every convention of civilized warfare. You use violence with a skill that suggests long practice. Yes, Wei admitted, we are warriors. We have fought wars for our entire history. We know violence intimately. We do not apologize for that. But we also know what violence costs. We know the price of war. That is why we fight only when necessary, only to protect, only in defense of life. The Zalthor speaker leaned forward. There is something else. The architect beacon. You knew what it was. You recognized the signal. Wei was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. Yes, we recognized it. Because the architects visited Earth long ago, before human civilization began, when we were still primitive hunters. They altered our development, guided our evolution, made us smarter, stronger, more adaptable than we should have been. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Wei raised her hand for silence. The architects were afraid. They had fought the swarm before and barely survived. They knew it would return someday. So they created a failsafe. They found a death world with promising primitive species and guided them to become something new. Something that could survive anything. Something that would answer the call when the swarm returned. You are saying humans were created as weapons? A counselor asked, horrified. We were created as guardians, Wei corrected. The architects gave us the tools, intelligence, endurance, adaptability, the will to survive at any cost. They put us on a world that would forge us in fire and blood. And they left us a gift. Knowledge locked in our DNA, activated by the architect beacon. The moment we heard it, we knew what we were meant to do. Why did you never tell the galaxy? The Zalthor demanded. Wei smiled sadly. Would you have accepted help from beings created as living weapons? Would you have trusted us? No. You would have feared us, isolated us, perhaps even tried to eliminate us before we became a threat. So we waited. We built our civilization. We explored the stars. We became more than what we were created to be. We became people with art, culture, dreams, and hopes. And when the call came, when someone needed help, we chose to answer. Not because we were programmed to, but because it was the right thing to do. Admiral Chen added her voice to the discussion. The architects gave us the capability for violence, but we chose what to do with it. We chose to protect rather than conquer, to defend rather than destroy. That choice is what defines us, not our origins. The council was silent for a long time. Finally, the Zalthor spoke. What do you want from us, Ambassador Wei? Territory? Resources? Power? None of those things, Wei said firmly. We want what we have always wanted. To explore the galaxy, to meet new species, to share knowledge and culture, to make friends. And if another threat comes, if someone else sends out a call for help, we want the chance to answer. That is all. That is everything. And if we refuse? A counselor asked. If we decide you are too dangerous? Chen's expression hardened. Then you will be making a mistake. But we will not fight you. We will return to our own space. We will leave you alone. But understand this. The swarm is broken, not destroyed. There are other threats in the galaxy, other darkness waiting. And when they come, when you are desperate and afraid, you will wish you had friends who know how to fight. The council debated for 3 days. In the end, they accepted humanity's offer, not because they trusted the Terrans completely, but because they had seen what humans would do for strangers. Action spoke louder than origins. On Valkesh Prime, as the human fleet prepared to depart, Tevsha stood with Sarah Chen in the memorial garden. They had become unlikely friends over the weeks of recovery and rebuilding. Will you come back? Tevsha asked. I hope so, Sarah said. I would like to see how your world heals, how you rebuild. Maybe I can bring some earth flowers next time. They would look beautiful here. Sarah, Tevsha said carefully, are you truly just a medic? Or are you a weapon, as the ambassador suggested? Sarah thought about the question. I am both, I am neither. I am a person who learned to heal and to fight, because my world demanded both. I chose to use those skills to help others. That choice makes me who I am, not my genetics or my training. A Valkesh child ran past, laughing, chasing friends through the garden. One of the millions still alive because of the Terrans. Sarah watched and smiled. We prayed to the gods, Tevsha said quietly, but the demons of Terra answered. Except you are not demons at all, are you? We are whatever we choose to be, Sarah said. Today, tomorrow, every day. That is the gift the architects gave us. Not strength or violence, but choice. The ability to decide what we become. The Terran fleet departed that evening, jumping to faster-than-light speed in flashes of distorted space. But they left behind more than memorials. They left behind hope. The knowledge that when darkness came, someone would answer. The architect beacon remained on Valkesh Prime, kept in a place of honor. Over the centuries that followed, it activated 17 more times. Different species, different threats, different desperate prayers sent into the void. Every time, Terra answered. Not because they had to, but because they chose to. And that choice made all the difference.